There's a moment in every life when you look around and realize you've been sleepwalking through your own existence. The days have blurred together like watercolors in rain. And somewhere between the morning alarms and evening collapses, you've lost the thread of who you're meant to be. Carl Jung called this the great unconsciousness, the state of living someone else's life, while your authentic self remains. Buried beneath layers of expectation, fear, and societal programming. You wake up one day and ask, whose dreams have I been chasing? Whose voice have I been listening to? And most painfully, where did I go? This isn't failure. This is the human condition. We're born into a world that immediately begins shaping us, molding us, telling us what success looks like, what happiness should feel like, what a life well lived resembles. But Jung understood something profound. Until we reclaim our own narrative, we're living as shadows of ourselves. The Swiss psychiatrist spent decades exploring the depths of human consciousness. And what he found was both disturbing and liberating. Most people, he discovered, live their entire lives without ever meeting themselves. They wear masks so convincingly that they forget their own face underneath. Think of the person you were as a child before the world told you who to become. There was a wildness there, a curiosity, a way of seeing that was uniquely yours. What happened to that person? Where did they go when you learned to fit in, to please others, to chase achievements that never quite satisfied the hunger in your soul? Jung believed that this disconnection from our authentic self is the source of most human suffering. We become depressed not because life is inherently meaningless, but because we're living a life that has no meaning for us. We feel anxious not because the world is dangerous, but because we've abandoned the very thing that could make us feel truly alive. The process Jung called individuation is nothing less than the journey back to yourself. It's the courageous decision to stop living on autopilot and start asking the hard questions. Who am I really? What do I actually want? What would my life look like if I stopped trying to be who everyone else needs me to be? But here's what Jung knew that most self-help approaches miss. This journey isn't about finding some perfect, squeezed, idealized version of yourself. It's about integrating all the parts of who you are, the light and the shadow, the acceptable and the rejected, the conscious and the unconscious. You see, we all have a shadow self. It's the repository of everything we've deemed unacceptable about ourselves, our anger, our desires, our fears, our imperfections. Jung realized that as long as we deny this shadow, we remain incomplete, forever chasing an impossible perfection that leaves us feeling empty and inauthentic. The woman who's always the people pleaser carries a shadow of fierce independence. The man who presents himself as completely rational harbors a shadow of deep emotion. The person who appears perfectly put together lives with a shadow of vulnerability and chaos. And here's the paradox. It's only by acknowledging and integrating these rejected parts that we become whole. This is why Jung said the goal isn't to become someone new, but to become who you've always been underneath the conditioning. It's not about adding more to yourself. It's not about adding more to yourself by moving what was never truly you to begin with. But integration requires something our culture desperately lacks: the willingness to sit with discomfort. We live in a world that promises quick fixes, instant gratification, easy solutions. Jung's path demands something different. It asks us to descend into the uncomfortable spaces of our psyche and befriend what we find there. Consider the dreams you've abandoned, not the childhood fantasies, but the deeper callings that you silenced because they seemed impractical, impossible, or incompatible with who you thought you should be. These weren't random whims. They were messages from your unconscious self, breadcrumbs leading back to your authentic path. Jung understood that our unconscious mind communicates through symbols, dreams, and what he called synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that seem too perfect to be random. Have you ever noticed how the same themes keep appearing in your life? It's the same types of people, the same challenges, the same opportunities. This isn't accident. It's your psyche trying to guide you toward wholeness. The businessman who keeps dreaming of art, the artist who's fascinated by science, the logical person drawn to mysticism, the spiritual seeker attracted to material success. These aren't contradictions to be resolved, they're complexities to be integrated. But integration isn't just about internal work. Jung recognized that we can only know ourselves through relationship with others, with the world, with life itself. The people who trigger us most intensely are often showing us our own disowned aspects. The colleague who annoys you with their confidence might be reflecting your own unexpressed power. The friend whose spontaneity irritates you might be mirroring your own suppressed freedom. This is why Jung said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to understanding ourselves. Our reactions are roadmaps to our shadow, and our shadow is the gateway to our wholeness. The path of individuation isn't comfortable. There will be moments when you question everything, when the old identity crumbles and the new one hasn't yet formed. Jung called this the dark night of the soul, the necessary dissolution that precedes rebirth. You might find yourself pulling away from relationships that no longer fit, leaving careers that once defined you, questioning beliefs you've held for decades. This isn't destruction, it's excavation. You're digging through layers of false identity to reach the gold of your authentic self. And yes, others might not understand. When you stop playing the role they've assigned you, when you stop being who they need you to be and start being who you are, there will be resistance. Some will try to pull you back into the old patterns. Some will feel threatened by your authenticity because it highlights their own disconnection. Jung knew this loneliness intimately. He called it the price of consciousness. But he also knew something else, the alternative remaining unconscious. Living someone else's life, dying without ever having truly lived, is far worse than any temporary discomfort. The process isn't linear. There's no final destination where you arrive at perfect self-knowledge and never struggle again. Individuation is a lifelong journey of becoming, of peeling back layers, of saying yes to more of who you are with each passing year. Think of it like this. Imagine you've been living in a house where you only use 3 rooms, while dozens of others remain locked and unexplored. Individuation is the process of discovering you have the keys to every door. Each room you unlock reveals new aspects of your potential, new ways of being, new sources of meaning and vitality. Some rooms will be beautiful, filled with talents you'd forgotten, dreams you'd abandoned, aspects of yourself that shine with possibility. Others will be dusty, neglected, maybe even a little frightening. These are your shadow rooms, and they need your attention too. The man who discovers he has a gift for nurturing after years of believing he must be tough. The woman who finds her voice after decades of silence. The logical person who embraces their intuition. The emotional person who develops their analytical side. This isn't about becoming someone else, it's about becoming more fully yourself. Jung observed that most people live what he called a provisional life, waiting for their real life to begin. They tell themselves they'll pursue their passions after they get the promotion, after they save enough money, after the kids are grown, after they retire. But life is happening now. Your real life is this moment, this choice, this breath. The tragedy isn't that we have limitations or that life is difficult. The tragedy is that we often live far below our full capacity, using only a fraction of who we could be. We settle for safety when we could choose growth, for familiarity when we could choose adventure, for the approval of others when we could choose self-respect. But here's the beautiful truth Jung discovered. It's never too late to begin. At any moment, you can choose consciousness over unconsciousness, authenticity over pretense, your own path over the path others have laid out for you. The door to your real life is always available. You just have to be willing to walk through it. This choice requires courage. Not the kind of courage that conquers mountains or faces physical danger, but the quiet courage to be honest with yourself about who you really are and what you really want. The courage to disappoint others in order to honor yourself. the courage to be vulnerable, to be seen, to take up the space you're meant to occupy. Jung called this process the confrontation with the self, capital S, not the small self of ego and social roles, but the deeper self that knows your purpose, your gifts, your reason for being here. This self has been waiting patiently for you to remember, to return, to stop running from your own magnificence. The signs are everywhere once you start looking. The activities that make you lose track of time. The conversations that light you up. The problems you can't stop thinking about. The injustices that move you to action. These aren't random, they're clues to your authentic calling. But authenticity isn't just about following your bliss. Jung understood that real individuation requires what he called holding the tension of opposites. Life isn't black and white, and neither are we. We can be both strong and gentle, both independent and connected, both serious and playful. The goal isn't to resolve these tensions, but to learn to live creatively within them. This is perhaps Jung's most radical insight. Wholeness doesn't come from perfection, but from integration. You don't become authentic by eliminating your flaws, but by embracing your full humanity, light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, success and failure. The person who tries to be only good becomes boring. The person who tries to be only strong becomes brittle. The person who tries to be only spiritual becomes ungrounded. But the person who embraces their full complexity becomes interesting, resilient, and genuinely helpful to others. Jung spent his life studying people who had undergone this transformation, and he found something remarkable. Those who had done the work of individuation became natural healers, teachers, and guides for others. Not because they had achieved perfection, but because they had achieved authenticity. When you stop wasting your life living someone else's dreams, when you stop hiding from your own truth, when you start honoring the full spectrum of who you are, something magical happens. You become a beacon for others who are still lost in their own unconsciousness. Your authenticity gives others permission to be authentic. Your courage to be imperfect gives others courage to be imperfect. Your willingness to live your truth invites others to examine their own lives and ask the questions they've been avoiding. This is the ultimate paradox Jung discovered. The more fully you become yourself, the more you have to offer the world. The more you honor your individual path, the more you serve the collective good. The more you stop trying to be everything to everyone, the more genuinely helpful you become. So here's the question Jung would ask you. How much longer will you wait? How much longer will you postpone the conversation with your authentic self? How much longer will you live provisionally, always preparing for a life that never quite begins? The clock is ticking, not in a fearful way, but in a way that honors the preciousness of your time here. Every day you spend unconscious is a day you can't get back. Every moment you waste trying to be who you're not is a moment stolen from who you could become. Jung believed that the world desperately needs individuals who have done this work, people who know themselves, who have integrated their shadows, who live from their authentic center rather than their conditioned responses. The crises we face as a species aren't primarily political or technological, they're consciousness. Problems that require consciousness solutions. But it starts with you. It starts with the courage to look in the mirror and ask, who am I really? What do I actually want? What would my life look like if I stopped betraying myself and started honoring the truth of who I am? The journey back to yourself won't be easy, but it will be the most important thing you ever do. Because at the end of your life, you won't regret the risks you took to live authentically. You'll regret the opportunities you missed, the dreams you abandoned, the person you could have been but were too afraid to become. Your authentic self is waiting. It has been waiting patiently through all the years of compromise and confusion, through all the times you chose safety over truth, through all the moments you dimmed your light to make others comfortable. That patient, persistent voice that whispers to you in quiet moments, that's not your imagination. That's your soul calling you home to yourself, The question is, are you finally ready to listen? If this message touched something deep within you, if it stirred a recognition of the life that's waiting to be lived, comment below. I choose my authentic path. Let it be a declaration, a commitment, a first step back to the magnificent person you've always been underneath it all.